Thank you. Narayanam namaskrityam Naram chaiva narottamam Devim sarasvatim vyasam Tato jayamudiraye Nashtapraya shabadreshu Nityam bhagavata sevaya Bhagavate uttama shloke Bhaktir bhavati naistiki Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya
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 Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya.
So we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 8, Chapter 9. The chapter is entitled, The Lord Incarnates as Mohini Murti. Please repeat. Yad Yujate Suvasu Karma Mano Vachobhi Yad Yujate Suvasu Karma Mano Vachobhi Dehatmajadishu Nirbhis Tad Asad Pritakvad Dehatmajisu Nirbhistad Asad Pritakvad Tair Eva Sad Bhavati Yad Kriyate Pritakvad Taireva Sad Bhavati Yad Kriyate Pritakvad Sarvasya Tad Bhavati Mula Nisechaman Yai Sarvasya Tad Bhavati Mula Nisechanam Yai Yad Yujate Suvasu Karma Mano Vachobhi Dehatmajadishu Nirbhistad Asad Pritakvad Eva sadbhavati yat kriyate pritakvat.
Eva sadbhavati yat kriyate apritagvat.
Sarvasya tadbhavati mulani sechanam vai.
Sarvasya yad bhavati mulani sechanam yad.
Please repeat.
Repeat the
Can you
shloka.
repeat this book?
Yadyujyate suvasu karma mano vachobhir.
Yadyujyate asubhasu karma mano vachobhir.
Dehatmajadishu nirvistadasat prithakvat.
Dehatmajadishu nibhistadasat prithakvat.
Taireva sadbhavati yat kriyate prithakvat.
Tereva sadbhavati yat kriyate apritagvat.
Sarvasya tadbhavati mula nishechanam yat.
Sarvasya tadbhavati mula nishechanam yat.
Yadyujyate suvasu karma mano vivachobhir.
Yadyujyate asubhasu karma mano vachobhir.
Dehatmajadishu nirvitat asat pritaktvat.
Dehatmajadishu nibhistad asat prithakvat.
Taireva sadbhavati yat kriyate pritikvat.
Tereva sadbhavati yat kriyate apritagvat.
Sarvasya tadbhavati mulani sechanam yat.
Sarvasya tadbhavati mulani sechanam yat.
Yay.
Yadyujyate asubhasu karma mano vachobhir.
Yadyujyate
asubhasu karma mano vachobhir.
Dehatmajadishu nibhistad asat prithakvat.
Dehatmajadishu nirvistadasat pritakvat.
Tereva sadbhavati yat kriyate apithakvat.
Tereva sadbhavati yat kriyate pritakvat.
Sarvasya tadbhavati mula nishechanam yat.
Sarvasya tadbhavati mulani sechanam yat.
Yadyujyate asubhasu karma mano vachobhir.
Dehatmajadishu nirvistadasat prataktvat.
Dehatmajadishu nibhistadasat prithakvat.
Taireva sadbhavati yat kriyate prataktvat.
Tereva sadbhavati yat kriyate apritagvat.
Sarvasya tadbhavati mulani sechanam yat.
Sarvasya tadbhavati mulani sechanam yat.
Please repeat. Yat.
Yat.
Whatever.
Whatever
Yujate is performed.
is performed
Asu for the protection of one's life.
for the protection of one's life. Vasu
Protection of wealth.
protection of wealth.
Karma
Activities.
Manaha by the acts of the mind.
By the acts of the mind.
Vachobhi by the acts of the words.
By the acts of the words.
Dehatmajadishu for the sake of one's personal body or family, etc.
For the sake of one's personal body or family, etc.
With reference to the body.
With reference to the body.
Nebihi by the human beings.
By the human beings. That. Asat.
Impermanent. Transient.
Pritakvat.
Because of separation from the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Because of the separation from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Te.
By the same activities.
Eva. Indeed.
Sadbhavati becomes factual and permanent.
Yat.
Which
Kriyate
is performed.
is performed.
Apritakvad because of non-separation.
Because of non-separation.
Sarvasya for everyone.
For everyone.
Tadbhavati becomes beneficial. Mulani
Sechana.
exactly like pouring water on the root of a tree.
Exactly like pouring water on the root of a tree.
Yat which. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada.
Prabhupada ki jai.
In human society, there are various activities performed for the protection of one's wealth and life of one's... In human society, there are various activities performed for the protection of one's wealth and life by one's words, one's mind, and one's action. But they are all performed for one's personal or extended sense gratification with reference to the body. All these activities are baffled because of being separate from devotional service. But when the same activities are performed for the satisfaction of the Lord, the beneficial results are distributed to everyone, just as water poured on the roots of a tree is distributed throughout the entire tree. Please repeat. In human society, there are various activities. Performed for the protection of one's wealth. And life. By one's words. One's mind and one's actions. But they are all performed. For one's personal or extended sense gratification. Which with reference to the body. All these activities are baffled. Because of being separate from devotional service. But when the same activities are performed. For the satisfaction of the Lord. The beneficial results are distributed to everyone. Just as water poured on the root of a tree. Is distributed throughout the entire tree. End of translation. Purport. This is a distinction between materialistic activities and activities performed in Krishna consciousness. The entire world is active, and this includes the karmis, the jnanis, the yogis, and the bhaktas. However, all activities except those of the bhaktas, the devotees, end in bafflement because of waste of time and energy. Moga samoga karma moga jnana vichetasaha. If one is not a devotee, his hopes, his activities, and his knowledge are all baffled. A non-devotee works for his personal sense gratification or for the sense gratification of his family, society, community, or nation. But because of all such activities are separate from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they are considered asat. The word asat means bad or temporary, and sat means permanent and good. Activities performed for the satisfaction of Krishna are permanent and good, but asat activities, although sometimes celebrated as philanthropy, altruism, nationalism, this ism or that ism, will never produce any permanent result and is therefore all bad. Even a little work done in Krishna consciousness is a permanent asset and is all good because it is done for Krishna, the all-good Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is everyone's friend, Suridam Sarvabhutanam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the only enjoyer and proprietor of everything. Bhuktaram Jagatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suridam Sarvabhutanam Yatva Mam Shanti Nrichita. Therefore, any activity performed for the Supreme Lord is permanent. As a result of such activities, the performer is immediately recognized. Nacha tasman manushyeshu kashin priyakritamaha. Such a devotee, because of full knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is immediately transcendental, although he may superficially appear to be engaged in materialistic activities. The only distinction between materialistic activities and spiritual activities is that material activity is performed only to satisfy one's own senses, whereas spiritual activity is meant to satisfy the transcendental senses of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By spiritual activity, everyone factually benefits, whereas by materialistic activity, no one benefits, and instead one becomes entangled in the laws of karma. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport to the 8th canto, 9th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Lord Incarnates as Mohini Murti. So then we're moving on to chapter 10. So I'll read the translation again. In human society, there are various activities performed for the protection of one's wealth and life, by one's words, one's mind, and one's action. But they are all performed for one's personal or extended sense gratification, with reference to the body. All these activities are baffled because of being separate from devotional service. But when the same activities are performed for the satisfaction of the Lord, the beneficial results are distributed to everyone, just as water poured on the root of a tree is distributed throughout the entire tree. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya
Chakshurmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namah.
Shri
Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kathamayam Tatati Swapadantikam
Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Namyate Girim
Yatkipatamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinataya.
So, continuing from yesterday's beautiful class by Baba Sindhu Prabhu, he spoke about he spoke a little bit about being Jai Shri Radha Parishishwara ki
Jai
Shri Shri Nitai Sachisuta ki
Jai
Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi ki.
Jai.
So Baba Sindhu Prabhu yesterday spoke a little bit about what it means to be a devotee, or what it means to be honest about about being a practicing devotee. And then he said Prabhupada in the purport invites us to meditate on that a little bit, to think about if we are honest, if we are simply dressing as a devotee, or we are really behaving like a devotee. He spoke about the importance of dressing as a devotee because it reminds yourself of who you are, and of course anybody who sees you immediately recognizes you as a devotee. So it's as a preaching tool and as a constant reminder that we represent Srila Prabhupada, so we should dress appropriately. But also to think that being a devotee doesn't simply mean to put on a nice tilak and be very clean. It also means to be clean-hearted and to be sincere. So today Prabhupada is speaking about everybody is engaged in some activity or another. The karmis, the jnanis, the yogis and the bhaktas. However, the difference is that because there's no connection to the Supreme Lord, if you are a jnani, a yogi, a bhakta, even a bhakta, you can be a bhakta of other demigods, or a yogi. If there is no connection to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all your activities end in bafflement, because you will not get the desired result. You don't get liberation from this constant hankering of the soul, or this constant desiring. We're constantly looking for something. So, but on the other hand, if a devotee, although he might be engaged in materialistic activities, he might be having a job, or he might be living in the material world, everything he does, because he's constantly thinking about Krishna, are spiritual activities. So this is a very interesting to think about how simply by changing the consciousness, by changing one's consciousness, the same activity completely changes. The result of the same activity completely changes. Prabhupada quotes this verse, Moga asa moga karmano, moga jnana vichetasaha. If one is not a devotee, his hopes, so even his hopes are baffled. So we see that nowadays depression is a very big thing in the material world. So people are losing hope. That's what becoming depressed means, that you feel you don't even see a bright future. Your hopes are baffled. Moga, so even your desires for a better future are baffled, because you say this is how it's going on now. Don't know how many devotees remember when we were all in lockdown during the COVID first year. Some people started thinking, this is it. This is how the world is going to work now. Now we all have to stay inside and we cannot go out. We were locked up for 60 days in some countries, a few more days in other countries, depending a little bit. So we very quickly we despair and we lose hope. Yes, moga karma. And because of that, because we have no hope, we don't have even, we don't see hope, we don't even have desires, our activities become useless. How many people have experienced that if you ask somebody to do something and they don't want to do it, you might as well do it yourself because they will do it in such a way that you'll have to come and do it after them. So, if somebody is not enthusiastic about doing something, it's better not to ask them, because then, it will not be done properly. So this is the conditioned state of life. This is how we're living in this material world. We're completely we're constantly searching and hankering for some happiness, and by happiness we search for something that doesn't end. Because we might get some happiness, some fleeting happiness, just a little glimpse, and we think, oh, we're very happy, but then it has to end. A very good example is you take a child to a park, and he's so happy, he sees his friends and he's running on the slide and the swing, he's very, very happy. But then the mother says, oh, we have to go home now. And the child starts crying. Why? Because this happiness is ending. So it's the same for us. We sometimes get a little bit of happiness. It's not that we don't. But then it ends. And then we forget that the child doesn't think, oh, it's okay to go home now because tomorrow I will come again to the park. He doesn't think like this. He just cries. So it's the same for the embodied soul. Nobody thinks, oh, it's okay for me to die because anyway my soul is eternal. When somebody is leaving their body, it's very painful for the person leaving the body and for everybody around them, because we tend to forget, like a child forgets that tomorrow we will come back to the park. And in this verse we have this beautiful analogy that we've heard so many times, that if we water the root of the tree, the whole tree, all the leaves, the branches, everything is satisfied. So if we engage in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Prabhupada says, the all-good Supreme Personality of Godhead, then everything else falls into place. Everything else is taken care of. So it's good to know sometimes where the things we hear comes from. So now we know this analogy comes from the last chapter of the last verse of the 9th chapter of the 8th canto, entitled "The Lord Incarnates as Mohini Murti." So we can quote. Next time we use this analogy, we can say, in the Bhagavatam, in chapter called "Lord Incarnates as Mohini Murti," it is said. It's true. Prabhupada wanted us to quote and become very expert with giving references, because it carries some more weight. sometimes it's very nice to say, oh, I heard, but then if you cannot say from where or I read, but it has much more value, it's much more heavy if you can say, no, I read there. So someone else can check. And they might actually read and get something else also from the same verse. So it's good to always quote our sources. Prabhupada constantly did it. We see in this purport, he quotes, I think, as many as 4 verses, I think. And he expected us to be very expert. He doesn't give the reference of these verses, but he expected us to know which verse he is speaking about. Prabhupada also said, I am writing these books for you. So we need to study them, read them, apply them. And by so doing, we will become an example in other people's lives. Like sometimes we think, we need to educate people at large, and we need to be an example, and we need to teach people, and we need to correct people. But most of the time, the most effective way to do so is by you simply applying what you preach. If you tell people, you should not eat, I'm just giving an example, you should not eat onion and garlic as an initiated devotee, but you yourself eat onion and garlic, then it's not very effective. People are going to say, what are you, if you say I shouldn't eat, then why are you eating? I'm just giving an example. It might be other things. So if we, as devotees, Prabhupada also speaks a little bit about different isms. We should be kind, we should be generous, we should be, even patriotism, Prabhupada speaks about it, and he's in one purport, you see. He says the best way of being patriotic is to give Krishna consciousness to others, so your fellow countrymen. And Lord Chaitanya said, whoever is born in Bharatavarsha Janma Hoilo Jar, he has the great responsibility of teaching everybody. So whoever has joined this movement, like we can say that, has the great responsibility of sharing it with others. But sometimes sharing it with others simply means being kind with people. And people will say, oh, thank you. And then they can appreciate you as a person, and they will appreciate you as a devotee. And most of the time, this is our first initial contact with people as persons, not really as devotee. When we're on the streets. But then if they like you as a person, there's more of a chance that they will inquire about you being a devotee. If they don't like you as a person, they will criticize you for being a devotee also. This is the truth. So we have this very great responsibility as members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, in a way as representatives of Srila Prabhupada, to be exemplary in every way. And by being exemplary means by first applying Prabhupada's teachings. This is the best way to be exemplary ourselves. It is also said that a preacher is extremely strict with himself and extremely compassionate and merciful and lenient towards others. So it doesn't mean that suddenly, okay, I am the ashram leader, these are the rules, and if anybody breaks them, you're out, because you will most probably end up alone if you try to be like. But if you're strict with yourself, but very, very lenient towards others, you will inspire others to improve their practice. So, we finished this beautiful pastime of Mohini Murti. Mohini Murti, Krishna took on the most enchanting form. It was such a beautiful form that it completely bewildered anybody that saw him. It's even described that even Lord Shiva, who is the highest amongst the demigods, he's actually, his position is completely unique. He's not the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he's not a living entity either. He's something in between. He's like yogurt, they say. He's not milk, he's something in between. he was bewildered by Mohini Murti. He was completely attracted by her. And Krishna, he took this form to protect his devotees, the demigods, because they had fallen into some misfortune. So they needed the help of the demons. But then the demons said, oh, we will exploit them. And we will try to steal the nectar. But of course, if the demons stole the nectar and they became immortal, it will be a chaos, because the demons, they don't only want to exploit one person or the demigods, they want to exploit everybody. This is the example of Hiranyaksha. He extracted so much gold from the planet Earth that the planet lost balance and fell to the bottom of the ocean. So this is a demoniac mentality. And we see it's still prevalent today. Like capitalism, we don't really think so much about where our garbage goes. We just consume, put it in a black bag and we throw it away. And it goes to some very poor countries and they have to face diseases and they have to deal with all this garbage that we produce. And we say, oh yeah, but we give them a little money for this garbage. This is a demoniac mentality. We're not giving them something that's beneficial for them. And this is really, like, we can see it's still so prevalent. You know, or sometimes they say, like, when the government gives them something, it's actually just to buy some votes. You know, they make some policies and people vote for them. They just want power. They don't really think about whether, like Prabhupada says, you know, they facilitate prostitution, gambling, intoxication, just so people will vote for them. You know, they're not really looking out for the welfare. So this is the demoniac mentality. This is the asuric mentality. So there's always the devas and the asuras. They're always in constant fight for balance. And at that point, the demigods, due to some curses, they were in a bit of a disfavorable position. So then the demigods rose, kicked them out from heaven, and so many. This is the story of the churning of the ocean. So then they were instructed, you should churn the milk ocean and get the nectar of immortality, and your power will be restored. But they couldn't churn the ocean by themselves because they had become quite depleted. So they said, well, in difficult times, sometimes you have to make friends with your enemy. So they went and they negotiated with the asuras. They said, okay, let's have a truce and let's try to do something. And then the asuras thought, oh, good, we have a good opportunity to get nectar of immortality, let's do it. And so they did it, and when they were churning the ocean, it's described so many things came up. We've read it in the previous chapters. You know, not only until the nectar finally appeared, there were some good things were coming out and some bad things were coming out, and they were dealing with it. They were sharing whatever was coming out, and finally the pot of nectar appeared, and started fighting over how we're going to distribute it. And then the demigods, they said, oh my God, everything is lost. They've got their hands on the pots, they're fighting amongst themselves, we will not get anything. So then Lord Vishnu said, I have an idea. And he took this form of Mohini Murti, which is most pleasing. Mohini means enchantress, most enchanting form. And when they saw her, they became completely bewildered and they wanted to please her. And so she said, okay, I'll distribute. So you all the demigods sit on one side, and all the asuras sit on the opposite side, and I'll serve you each your portion. So it's described that she was serving the demigods and smiling at the asuras. So although they're not getting anything, because she was looking and smiling at them, they felt, oh, okay, we're getting our part. Until Rahu, he said, oh, what's going on? And he switched sides. And of course, Lord Vishnu, Mohini Murti is Lord Vishnu, all-knowing. And of course, she knew what happened, but it's part of the pastime. Of course, she knew that this is an asura who switched sides and is just pretending to be there. He happened to be sitting next to Chandra and Surya, and they denounced him. Oh, he's not, he's not from the other side. He's not one of us. But he already got his part, and he already sipped it. So it said that the nectar was in his throat. Immediately Mohini Murti summoned the Sudarshan Chakra and cut off his head. So therefore, Prabhupada says every fortnight or so, there's an eclipse. This is Rahu attacking the sun or the moon because they denounced him and they didn't allow him to become immortal. So whenever Prabhupada also uses this story to explain that whenever the devotees are in a difficulty, actually the whole Srimad Bhagavatam is about that, how Krishna protects his devotees again and again and again. And there's so many examples. Like each story actually is about a devotee who somehow or other has some difficulty and Krishna finds a solution. So in this case, Mohini Murti was part of the solution, and cutting off the head of Rahu was the solution. And because the nectar was already within this part of the body, I guess, it couldn't die. So Rahu is just a living head. That's how he's represented. And sometimes he tries to eat the sun and the moon. So if you see the eclipse, sometimes there's like a little portion missing. And it's inauspicious because it's a demoniac planet present in the air. So you should... Anyway, devotees don't really take too much care about it. We just continue. But in some places in India, they even stop the deity worship. You don't cook anything, you don't go outside. They stay inside and they chant mantras, and Prabhupada didn't tell us to do any of that. He actually, in fact, he didn't give us any instructions. So we keep the worship going, we cook, we offer to the deities, we don't follow that. But sometimes you will hear some devotees that are surprised that, oh, ISKCON you don't do. We just follow what Prabhupada told us. Anyway, so this is the story. And the reason why it's also, there's such a big story, because they could simply say Krishna always protects his devotees, and that's it. And we could understand, but no, like we're told all these elaborate stories again and again and again and again. And it's just simply to captivate our imagination, our mind, or we can start imagining. We hear a description of how Mohini Murti was dressed or what happened, and some people have different imaginations of how this whole pastime is unfolding. Not, of course, according to. So it's done to facilitate our engagement, our intellectual engagement, and to enjoy simply listening to these pastimes, hearing about these pastimes. They're very attractive. And all the stories are actually like that. Some cases are very extreme. There's also then the story of Prahlad Maharaj, the story of Dhruva Maharaj, the story of Parikshit Maharaj. There's like all from the very beginning until the very end. It's different. It's the stories of devotees, their relationship with Krishna, how they serve Krishna and Krishna protects them. Even sometimes Krishna putting himself in danger or in jeopardy. There's also this beautiful story of the Mahabharata, where Lord Krishna, he promised that he wouldn't pick up a weapon. And Bhishma, he promised, I'm going to make Krishna break his promise. And finally Krishna always pleases his devotees. And he picked up a wheel. So in a way, he broke his promise because he picked up a wheel like a weapon. But it's not really a weapon, it's a wheel. So, but Bhishma was very satisfied. Lord Bhishma was very pleased that, because he had this Kshatriya spirit and he wanted to see Krishna attack him. He wanted to experience that. So when so this is the beauty of Krishna and his relationship with devotees, that he always tries to satisfy his devotees. And in what we're speaking about today, Krishna, he becomes so pleased by his devotees that whatever activity a devotee performs becomes perfect, simply because he's a devotee of Krishna. So, there's also a very beautiful story of, there was a Brahmana who was living near the Ganges. And every morning when he used to walk to take his bath, he would come across a prostitute who was coming back from her night of work. So he was going early in the morning and she was coming back late. Early in the morning she was coming home, and they would cross paths. And this Brahmin he wouldn't say anything to her, of course, but he was always thinking, oh my God, what a life. How unfortunate, look at this, what is so unfortunate. And this lady, on the other hand, she used to think, oh wow, how fortunate he is. He's waking up, going to the Ganges to start his prayers. How I wish I could do it. Like she was thinking about this. And they both passed away around the same time. And then they were being brought in front of Yamaraj together. And she said, okay, you are going to Vaikuntha, the prostitute. And the Brahmin, you are going to be born as a prostitute. Why? Because at the time of leaving your body, she was thinking about the Brahmana. She was thinking about his transcendental activities. And he was thinking, oh my God, this lady I see every day. So this is the consciousness. So he was engaged his whole life in service. But at the time of death, he thought about that. And this is what he remembered. This was his strongest impression of his life, samskara. And this woman, although she was engaged in sinful activities, her strongest samskara was how fortunate and how pious this man is. How I wish I could be like him. So then she was liberated. So again, like what Baba Sindhu Prabhu was saying yesterday, the dress is not everything. We have to be conscious about our activities, what we think, how we think, what we aspire, and what impressions we take. Sometimes we can't really control it. Sometimes we see something and we get a little bit affected, or it creates an impression on our mind. Sometimes, but we can also cultivate it, and we can, by engaging in sadhana bhakti, we can create some impressions in our heart and mind, and create this strong memories, or sometimes going to beautiful kirtan and having some nice blissful experience. It stays with you, and we should try and recreate that as much as possible. So in a time of difficulty, when we cannot control what we're thinking about or what we remember, if we have a strong enough impression, and of course by the mercy of Krishna, we might remember some of these things, and it might help us to continue in our journey. So sometimes, yes, there's also beautiful stories of devotees who joined the movement, and then for various reasons left. But then at their time of death, suddenly they saw somebody to come to take them with them. Yes, there's a very beautiful story of a French devotee who was a sannyasi and who had a very scandalous fall down. And then he left and he became a satanic a sect leader, not just a worshipper. He was a leader. And he had, I think, 2 or 3 wives, and he was nicely engaged in not devotional service. And at the time of death, actually, one of his wives came later on to save the devotees, and she said he was lying down on the hospital bed. His body was completely emaciated. He had been fasting for days and days and days. He was really about to pass out, and suddenly he sat up on the bed. He said, "Prabhupada," and he died. So for so many years he had actually no contact with devotees, no contact with, and suddenly he saw Prabhupada because he sat up on his bed. and he died. So she came to see the devotees, and she was very impressed by that. So she came and she told them, this is what happened. This is Prabhupada's mercy. This is really Krishna's mercy on certain people, because they never, like Prabhupada said, whatever little activity you perform is never lost. Even if you forget, or even if you, but we shouldn't depend on that. But the reality is that Krishna never forgets. This is really, he is most merciful. And Srila Prabhupada never forgets. So these devotees in the beginning gave him everything. And they tried. And then due to material attachment, sometimes offenses, they might have fallen down from their positions. But Prabhupada never forgets. And Prabhupada was there at the end of his life to give him another opportunity. So this is really the beauty of Krishna consciousness, the amazing mercy we have, and the great fortune we have that we are not perfect. We have so much conditioning, so many shortcomings. We were born in different parts of the world. We have different samskaras, different needs, even simple things like some devotees like to eat very spicy. Some devotees cannot digest spicy, and some devotees, if they eat rice every day, they go crazy, and some devotees, they need to eat pasta every day. My husband. But this is actually nothing. We have, these are just little, according to our karma, guna karma. We are born in different parts of the world because we have to learn different things. We have to burn certain amount of karma, so we are born. And depending on where we're born, we have different habits, different needs, different expectations, different ways of understanding things. Go explain to a Swiss devotee that on time is, even 2 minutes late is still on time, and he will freak out. Things like this. But we have something in common. We have Srila Prabhupada, and we have Srila Prabhupada's books. So in all our variegatedness and madness of upbringing and impressions and karma and mental capacity, we have one thing in common, and we should fixate on that. We shouldn't give so much importance on, oh, the Swiss devotees are like this, or the Bengali devotees are like that, or the French devotees, oh my God, are like, oh la la. I was sitting in Srimad Bhagavatam class one day in Mayapur, and Janani Prabhu was speaking about Omkar. I don't know if anybody heard of Omkar Prabhu. He was a very good pujari. He was a French devotee, and Prabhupada really liked the way he dressed the deities. He was a pujari in Vrindavan, and he taught most of the pujaris. He passed away very soon, early on. He wasn't around for very long. So he taught Janani Prabhu, who is the head pujari in Mayapur, everything about dressing. And I think I was the only French person in Mayapur. I'm saying French because... And I don't know how Janani Prabhu knew that I was French. So he started speaking about Omkar Prabhu. And he looked at me and he said, yeah, Omkar Prabhu, he was very, oh la la. So this is what the world thinks about French people. We're oh la la. We are alarmed by any little thing. We're so alarmed, and we throw, everything is like, oh. So he made a joke about that. Anyway, regardless of all that, we have a common goal. We've joined this movement. We've taken shelter of Srila Prabhupada. We've taken shelter of Prabhupada's disciples. And we've taken shelter of everything Srila Prabhupada has given us. The process of deity worship, sadhana, reading his books, going out and distributing his books, preaching. This is all Srila Prabhupada's process. And we should focus on that and work together as a family to improve. So I will end here. I want to apologize if I hurt anybody's sensibilities with my various examples. I didn't mean to do so. If anybody has any questions or comment or would like to add anything or would like to bring up a point, please do so.
Yeah. Yeah, I have two.
Yes?
First one is, especially when I was in India, I met quite some Indian devotees, also members of ISKCON, who, for example, like the eclipse thing that you were mentioning, but also other things that, you know, like they were stressing and they said it's very important and like even as ISKCON devotee you should follow. But then other sources say like, no, Prabhupada never said this, like don't do it. So it's a bit confusing, to be honest.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
We have
Shraddha ceremony. Shraddha ceremony. Even in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada writes, but then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also does it.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did it. Actually, some things are cultural. Some things are, you see, I mean, we are born in Mleccha countries, we have no culture. We have different kind of culture and we cannot apply. We have different kind of culture, I would say that. I would not say we have no culture, not to offend anybody. But we have a culture that cannot really apply to devotional service. Our culture is different. And then there is the Indian culture. And there's some devotees also, there was a debate about Karwa Chauth. It's a fast that some, not even all Indian women just did.
You know?
Not all India, no.
Okay.
It's particular to Maharashtra.
North also.
Yeah.
They do.
Women fast and they pray for the long life of their husbands. So there was a question whether initiated devotees should do it or shouldn't do it. The reason is they shouldn't do it. We already fast on Ekadashi and on festival days, etc., etc., etc. But if it's a cultural thing and they feel it's important to do it, sometimes because of family pressure around them, you know, like what is the society going to think of them, or and it doesn't interrupt their devotional service. They should do it. They can do it. It's like for us here, you know, we are invited to a cousin's wedding. You know, should we go or shouldn't we go? If you don't go, they might not think anything about it. It's okay. If you don't go, they might be all hurt and say, oh, the Hare Krishnas, they're so fanatic and they don't, you know, they joined the movement now and they don't want to, we are their cousins. And you should go. Because by criticizing you, they're criticizing Krishna in a way. So yes, this is very confusing. Some things are cultural and they shouldn't be done if they interrupt your devotional service. They can be done if they don't interfere with your devotional service and if it's an important cultural thing in your family and you have to do it. And for the Shraddha ceremony, it's natural for someone who has lost a loved one to feel that they want to do something for them. Prabhupada said, chant, you know, engage in devotional service, distribute prasadam, and that is enough. But sometimes some people, they feel they need to do a little more. And some devotees feel that we should accommodate it and we should do it. Again, you know, this is, Prabhupada said, we don't need to do it. Yanti deva vratam deva pitti yanti pitti vrata. To those who, he considers this worshipping the ancestors. You know, are you doing the Shraddha ceremony because you think that now your father has left or your mother and now they're worshipable? Or are you doing it to please the devotees so they would give their blessings to help your loved one in their journey? It's again a question of consciousness. So it's Krishna consciousness is a personal thing. And it's a very, so it really much depends on how you do everything. There's also a very big debate about So many things Prabhupada never mentioned. And later on, devotees from India with like maybe Brahminical background or different backgrounds came forward and said this is very important. There's a big debate about what to eat on Ekadashi. Should we eat carrots? Should we not eat carrots? Should we eat tomatoes? Should we... Again, you know, Prabhupada didn't give. He said fruits, vegetables, milk. He never said quinoa. And you know, but devotees say, well, it's not a grain, so we can eat quinoa. I'm not saying don't eat quinoa, please. I am just saying Prabhupada didn't write down a list about you can eat this, and this. He just said this. And then, of course, many people consider carrot a vegetable, so we eat carrots. And some people consider that carrot, we should never even offer it, especially not on Ekadashi. So there is sometimes this, at least I don't think these things are actually very important. We shouldn't give it too much importance.
Yeah.
If it doesn't interrupt your service, if you're with someone who doesn't want to eat carrots, don't eat carrots. It's just one day. You know, there's so many other, and if you're with someone who wants to eat carrots, eat carrots. You know, it's just one day. You know.
That should not be the focus.
We heard Maharaj saying like Bhaktisiddhanta was feeding his disciple who was preaching with rice on Ekadashi before they can go and distribute books. I mean, we should not eat rice, but this is to understand that we have to be a little bit intelligent sometimes and see why we do this.
There's a story also of devotees now. Some devotees, they want to do extra on Ekadashi and they decide not to sleep and not to eat and not to drink and not to... It's very nice if they can do it. But there's a story of, devotees in Mayapur, they decided to do Nirjala Ekadashi. And suddenly Prabhupada came down into the temple and he said, where's everybody? He said, oh, Sri Prabhupada, they're all fasting, so they're very tired, so they're taking rest. He said, cook a feast for them, make them come immediately. Prabhupada was not very impressed by that. You know, like we should, if you can do it, you should do it. And you want to do it, please go ahead. But don't let it become an excuse, or, oh no, today I cannot go on book distribution because I am doing Nirjala. No. Eat some fruits and go on book distribution. This is Prabhupada's mood.
You should not interrupt your service.
You should not interrupt your
I
service.
saw Jean Bas during when we had a meeting of Ed Pujari. He was fasting all day and at night he was giving class. He was on the Vyasasana, really very strong preaching. So okay, he can do,
Some
but not
people,
everyone can do. So if you can do, very good. That you continue your service, you preach. But if you cannot, better to eat and preach.
Yeah, some people's bodies are very adaptable to austerity. They can go on with no sleep and with no eating and with no... There's this story of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj also. He was distributing books and he used to eat 2 carrots, a handful of walnuts,
apple, yogurt,
and a little bit of yogurt.
That too in the
once
night.
a day.
That too in the night, 10 p.m.
And the whole day he was distributing books, you know. So I cannot do that. And I am not saying that don't do it. I'm just saying don't let it become so important that then you neglect your service, which is actually what Prabhupada gave us. So if you want to do a Shraddha ceremony for your family, let it also not interrupt, you know, your sadhana. If you want to do Karwa Chauth, by all means, but don't let it also, you know, say, oh no, I will not be going to Mangalarti now because I am like this is not what Prabhupada expected of us. So our first loyalty and duty is to Prabhupada and to the process he gave us. And then if for some reason you feel the pressure from your society to do it, or you have a desire to be a little bit more austere, sure, you know, why not? This is my take on it. I don't know if it's everybody's take on it. I also don't want to step on anybody's toes, but But as we grow, and as different people,
Mm.
we will see different cultural elements try to sneak in, and we should be able to distinguish it and understand what is the important thing here. Is it so important to do this?
Yeah.
Or is it more important to maintain what Prabhupada gave us? And I think the answer is quite clear.
Our Sindhu Prabhu in his previous classes, he was telling about palmistry, and his life is also related to it. Palmistry and astrology. So he was telling that use it as a tool. So maybe we can use it as a tool if it helps us to be Krishna conscious, because that is our main emphasis. Our consciousness is like,
Sometimes it's difficult because you will meet some very impressive looking devotees and they'll tell you, oh, you didn't check your astrology, oh. And you'll feel like, oh, did I do something wrong, you know? But, so it's difficult sometimes, and it's very confusing, like what you were saying, for us, you know, who we don't have any, it's not a cultural thing for us, and when we have like more cultural devotees instruct us about something, it can be a little, but I think we should go back always to what Prabhupada and his disciples are telling us, not really so much, we might take it as an advice, we might use it even as a little tool, but we shouldn't let it take over, you know, and confuse us about what we should do. What we should do is very clear. We should engage in devotional service through the process Srila Prabhupada gave us, you know. Everything else, for some people, because they have been brought up in this way, they cannot even think of doing it in a different way. Like sometimes we can give the example of cooking. If you have been brought up your whole life cooking in a certain way, and suddenly they tell you, no, rice, you cannot do it like this. It might not be easy for you. You know, if you do rice this way, it always comes out good. And suddenly somebody tells you, no, you should do it this way. And because it gives you a doubt, and you might not cook it properly because you try to apply someone else's method. So in these cases, when we are confused, I think the safe way is to always, go back. And I was like, Ekadashi. I mean, whatever is going on in the temple, follow that. Or if you're staying with some devotees, whatever they are doing, follow that. And in your own time, whatever Prabhupada told us. And if somebody asks you, you say, this is what I do. What Prabhupada told us.
It's a good answer. I just had like one more aspect that like came across, that there's sometimes this thing like where, I mean, I don't want to point fingers at anyone, but like I came across this thing that sometimes these cultural Indian devotees somehow feel like the reason why we should follow what they say is because it's their culture, and what Prabhupada gave is coming from them. So we are just like in the West, and we have a different culture, so basically we have less background or knowledge to you know what I mean?
I mean, again, the basis of our knowledge is this. The Bhaktivedanta purports. Let's be clear on that. Whether you're a devotee born in India, from a very good Brahmin family, or whether you're a devotee born in the last village of Spain, Our authority is this. Like, let's not be delusional about that. Like, this is really it. And if anything comes in conflict with what Prabhupada gave us, we should immediately discard it. This is really Prabhupada's instruction. If, Prabhupada says in his books, that Prabhupada also sometimes in like conversations might have said something, so we always go back to the books. Prabhupada told us these are the law books for the next 10,000 years. So we go back to the books. But if you have like a very cultural devotee who, I'll give you an example, who says, okay, no, I mean, when devotees are trying to get married, maybe, we have different standards in different temples. So some temples will allow you to associate a little bit before getting married. Some temples are saying, no, if they're not married, they shouldn't even be seeing each other. There's different standards. So I think that is an adjustment done to where that temple is. You know, if it's a temple in France and it's a French boy and a French girl, they cannot conceive of just meeting their husband and wife on the wedding day and getting married and living their life together. This in the Western culture is, we just cannot even accept it. But in India it works. You know, so many hundreds and thousands of Indian couples, they meet on their wedding day, they've never even had a discussion. It's true. And they stay married for their whole life, and they're very good, strong couples. And so what do we do about that? Do we apply that now in France and we tell all the brahmacharis and brahmacharinis, not brahmacharis of course, but devotees who want to get who decide devotees who want to change their ashram. Brahmacharis and brahmacharinis don't get married, but they change their ashram. So devotees who want to change their ashram, we tell them, no, this is how it's done. And by the way, the temple president would choose your who you get based on your astrology. It would not work. Now, is what we're doing here wrong? This is a question. And do we have to follow what's going on in India? If we apply it and it goes completely wrong, that is wrong. You know?
This says everybody who follows the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada como guide, não? Mas as chances, it's difícil read o Contradictions Pradika, ele serve do guide de Kala Deshupatra. Example, is I travel a lot all over the road, have this Prabhupada instruction, normal, mas you can push it in different way. Isso não é wrong. E quando you put yourself in one place, this is normal, you follow the place. So now you get disturbed and the place agitated the place.
Yes.
Because you need to become yourself the same connection.
Yes.
You everybody doing something, you think he is because in South doing like this, but in New Life we don't different, in Zurich, Bhaktivedanta do different. So you can, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and these differences are actually very small. And they're mostly cultural differences. You know, they say when in Rome, do like the Romans. So if you're in India and you see all the girls, you know, dress in a certain way, and you want to blend in, it's easier to just do it. But if you're going to dress that way and you're not going to be blending in here and everybody's going to be like, what is this new way of putting the sari? Then don't do it. Like, don't create a disturbance. Yes, don't create a disturbance. This is not necessary. It's as we keep growing as a movement, and as actually as Srila Prabhupada's disciples keep leaving us, we're gonna face this more and more and more and more. Yes, as cultural things are gonna. So I think it's very important for us to really understand. You know, no. This is the law book. This is what we follow. And if somebody else wants to follow, it's fine. We should not stop them. But it doesn't mean that this has to be now applied across the board. It's not. It's not. If it had to be applied across the board, waking up in the morning, chanting 16 rounds, reading the scriptures, Prabhupada has given us this. You know, this is what has to be applied. You know, that's all. Everything else.
Yeah.
You know, in France we eat a lot of crème fraîche, and in Spain we eat only olive oil. It's not important. It's really, it depends on, it's a cultural thing.
It's like it says, mas you live here, mas you move para different place, you need to follow the different place. You know, like preaching, okay, in my place, I eat this, why here, no, you need to do this. Only do what the people say, no? In different places. You don't want to change nothing, no? The different places, no? I move in different places, example, in New Mayapur, the devotees no want to put some spicy, but as I go to another place, the devotee put a lot of chili in the prasad, you know, I don't preach for the devotee, I New Mayapur, people, no, I eat it like it, you know. I'm getting more simple, no? For me in Krishna consciousness, for myself, talk about myself, no?
Yeah, I will just end with this. Prabhupada said this process is simple for the simple. So Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.